It was just past midnight, the kind of night where even the wind hesitates to move. James sat alone in his cramped apartment, the walls lined with dusty books, old radios, and a collection of recording equipment that hummed quietly in the dark. He had been chasing frequencies for months, obsessed with the strange, whispered tales of a station that no one claimed to own. He turned the dial slowly, letting the static wash over him like cold water. There, a faint pulse, almost inaudible. A voice, soft, almost like a memory. "James, can you hear me?" He froze. No one had ever said his name. Not aloud. Not ever. His hand trembled over the tuner. The room felt colder, darker. A smell of damp metal and mold crept in from the corners, curling around his senses like smoke. He shook his head, trying to dismiss it. Perhaps the old records were bleeding into his headphones. But then, another whisper, softer, yet clearer. "Why did you come?" Jim's heartbeat quickened. His palms were slick with sweat. His ears were ringing. Yet he could still hear the voice, calling him closer. He reached for his notebook, scribbling frantic notes. A frequency 19.3. Signal pattern. Ghostly modulation. Impossible. He leaned back, listening. The static around him began to warp. Shadows in the room seemed to shift on their own, lengthening and twisting toward the desk, toward him. The low hum in the equipment matched a rhythm in his skull, pulsing, beckoning. He remembered reading about a woman named Ellen Marrow, the station's last host. Disappeared in 1987, her voice allegedly still echoing through the ether. Urban legend, number stations, infrequent signal, he muttered to himself. Yet here it was, real, horribly real. Another fragment. "You're next." James' stomach dropped. He stumbled toward the window. The city lights smeared into ghostly streaks through the foggy glass. Was it coming from the frequency? Or from inside his head? The static surged, filling the room, echoing off the walls, climbing inside his skull like frost along bare bones. He pressed the recorder to his ear, desperate to capture it, to prove it, to survive it. And then, silence. Not the gentle kind. Not the kind that signals the end of a sound. The kind of silence that waits, watches, and remembers. A faint hum returned. Longer, deeper, almost alive. And once again, in that spectral frequency, "James, you found me." His chest tightened. The signal had answered, and he realized there would be no turning back. Morning light struggled through the blinds, slicing the room into pale, uneven lines. James rubbed his eyes. His head throbbed from the previous night's signal. The hum lingered, a ghostly echo in the corners of his mind. He pulled open a drawer filled with old cassette tapes, labeled in fading ink, "Got him, Midnight Caller, 1987. Fingers trembling. He slid the tape into his recorder. Static hissed, and a low, almost imperceptible vibration filled the room. "Ellen Marrow," he whispered. Her voice was faint, distorted. A soft lull within the static, fragments of conversation. A joke, a sigh, a name repeated 3 times. He scribbled notes feverishly, his handwriting jagged and uneven. Frequency 19.3, tonal spikes. Hum. Untraceable source. Every time he replayed a snippet, it seemed to shift, words rearranging themselves, like wet ink spreading across paper. James paused, pressing the headphones to his ears. Outside, the city stirred. The wind rattled the fire escape. Somewhere, a dog barked, lonely and echoing. He tried to shake the feeling that the room itself was listening. He opened his laptop and scoured forums dedicated to numbers stations, EED recordings, and strange radio anomalies. Eyewitnesses spoke in hushed tones. You hear her voice calling my name, even when the radio is off. Static follows me. In dreams, in hallways. A chill ran down his spine. Could it be coincidence, or something more sinister? The patterns on the recordings matched the old Connet project files he had downloaded years ago. Numbers, tones, and distorted whispers, all overlapping in ways that defied logic. James leaned back in his chair. His heart raced. The smell of mold from the apartment's corner seemed stronger, more intrusive, like the walls themselves exhaling. He rubbed his temples, trying to dispel the vertigo, the nausea, the sense that something was standing just behind him, unseen. He replayed the last segment of the tape. You shouldn't be here. The voice was clearer now, almost intimate. He recognized it from the night before. Soft, patient, terrifying. Was it in the tape or in his mind? He could no longer tell. James leaned over the laptop, cross-referencing the forum posts with newspaper archives. Local reports from 1987 described sudden disappearances near the station, unexplained tremors, and insomnia spreading through the town. Oddly, every incident coincided with the dates of Ellen Marrow's broadcasts. A sudden buzz from the recorder made him flinch. Static filled the room again, low, vibrating, almost like a heartbeat. And beneath it, he swore he heard, James, you are too close. He froze, frozen by the certainty that the signal was no longer just a recording. It was aware. It was responding, and it knew where he was. He leaned back, the room spinning slightly. Outside, the fog pressed against the window, thick and suffocating. Somewhere, in the hiss of the city, the whisper lingered. Don't stop, or it will find you. James' hands shook as he reached for his notebook again. The first traces were found, but following them might lead him somewhere he could never return from. The rain tapped lightly against the window, a soft rhythm that clashed with the pounding of James' heart. He sat hunched over the pile of yellowed newspaper clippings, audio reels, and forum printouts. The story of Ellen Marrow was more than legend. It was documented, fragmented, and terrifying. According to the archives, she began as a local radio host in the early 1980s, known for her warm, hypnotic voice. She hosted Invithe Midnight Caller A, speaking to lonely listeners with a gentle empathy that made them confide their deepest fears. One evening, November 13th, 1987, Ellen accepted a mysterious call. The live broadcast recorded only static after her voice quavered. I can't hear it. By morning, she had vanished. The station was silent, yet the equipment remained operational. Tapes from that night were later found, but they played fragments, shuffled words, whispers that seemed personal, as if directed at whoever listened. James played one of the oldest reels, the hiss and crackle filling the room. A low, tremulous voice emerged beneath the static. The air remembers. It waits. He shivered. The words were not random. They seemed to react to him, to the very act of listening. The smell of old tape, damp and chemical, clung to his fingers, mingling with the stale scent of his apartment. Cross-referencing the dates, James noticed a pattern. Every disappearance in town coincided with her broadcasts. Reports spoke of insomnia, whispers at night, faint voices repeating names. Some witnesses claimed they had recorded messages that weren't there before, phrases appearing on tapes after they had been rewound. James leaned back, rubbing his eyes. The apartment felt smaller, heavier, like the weight of the past pressing on the walls. He could almost hear the voices of those who had vanished, trapped somewhere between signal and reality. His laptop pinged. A new forum post. He hear her, calling me by name, even though I live miles from the station. She waits in the airwaves. She knows who listens. James' pulse quickened. It was no longer just a story. It was a warning. And in the silence between the lines, he felt a presence, watching, waiting, as though the very room itself were attuned to the echoes of the past. He played another segment. You'll know the sound, or become part of it. Static surged violently, making the reel tremble. His eyes darted to the corner of the room, where shadows pooled unnaturally. Was it just a flickering light, or something else? Moving, listening, learning. James grabbed his recorder, desperate to capture every detail, every whisper. The more he played, the more he felt the pull of the past. Ellen Marrow's voice was no longer just a memory. It was alive, reaching through time, through the signal directly to him. And then, a new phrase, clearer than ever. James, you should have stopped. The words pierced through the static, chilling him to the bone. It was the past, the present, and something beyond. Something that would not let go. James exhaled slowly. Though his chest was tight, the echoes of the past were not silent anymore. And he realized, with a cold, sinking certainty, this was only the beginning. The night was thick with fog as James approached the old station. The outline of the building loomed, like a blackened tooth against the gray sky. Rust streaked the walls. Windows, broken and jagged, reflected nothing but darkness. His boots crunched over the gravel parking lot. Every step echoed. Too loud. Too empty. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and mildew. The smell of rot and an old electronics stung his nostrils. James flicked on his flashlight. Beams cut through the darkness, revealing wires dangling from the ceiling, peeling paint, and old control panels layered in grime. The faint hum of the past lingered, static, irregular pulses, almost like a heartbeat. He moved cautiously, notebook in hand, documenting every anomaly. Every shadow seemed to twitch when he wasn't looking. He swore he saw shapes in the corners of his eyes, forms that weren't his own. A sudden crackling sound made him freeze. A voice, soft and distant, drifted from the control room. "Yo, James, why are you here?" He swallowed hard. The sound was unmistakable. Ellen Marrow, but that voice should not have been in the abandoned station. Decades old, the building supposedly empty. As he stepped closer, the floor groaned under his weight. The temperature dropped sharply, his breath fogging in front of him, fingers numb. He reached for a console covered in dust. A tape deck clicked on by itself, spitting out a reel that spun slowly, whispering fragments of names and dates. James' hands shook as he lifted the reel. Static surged, filling the room with a vibrating pressure in his ears. The walls seemed to pulse, bending subtly in the dim light. Was it the fog outside, or the building itself distorting reality? He turned to leave, but the door slammed shut with a deafening clang. His heart raced. The hum of the old station swelled, a choir of static and whispers, echoing through every corridor. "You shouldn't have come." James froze, unable to move. The voice was no longer distant. It circled him, intimate and accusing. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, forming shapes that weren't there a moment before. He realized with a sudden, icy clarity, the station was alive, and it knew him. Every step forward pulled him deeper, into a labyrinth of sound, memory, and something darker. James tried to steady his breathing, Every nerve screamed that he should turn back, but the reel in his hand whispered his name, pulling him further into the heart of the abandoned station. And as the walls closed in, he understood. There was no going back. The deeper James moved into the station, the heavier the air became. It smelled of rust, decay, and something faintly metallic, like old blood. Every step echoed unnaturally, bouncing off walls that seemed closer than they should be. He reached the main control room. Dusty consoles blinked with erratic lights, as if powered by unseen hands. The reels spun on their own, whispering fragments of names, dates, and desperate pleas. James reached out, trying to decipher a faint pattern, but the words twisted before his eyes. A sudden thump behind him made him spin. Nothing, just the shadows, stretching and moving in ways that defied logic. Then the static surged, louder, oppressive, filling his skull with a ringing pressure. And the voice came again. "You can't leave. Not now." James staggered back, tripping over cables. Panic gripped him, a raw, gnawing terror. His pulse thundered in his ears. The reel spun faster, voices overlapping into a cacophony of whispers, screams, and fragments of Ellen Merrill's broadcasts. He tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. The temperature dropped sharply, his breath freezing midair. Every shadow in the room stretched toward him, alive, reaching, almost tangible. On the console, a monitor flickered to life. A grainy image appeared. A figure, standing in a doorway far down the corridor, pale and indistinct. And then, it moved, not like a human, like a distortion, something bending space as it walked. James tried to run. His legs were heavy, as if the floor itself resisted him. Every exit seemed further away. The doors had vanished. The whispers grew louder, swirling around him. Names he didn't recognize. Memories that weren't his. They seeped into his mind. A hand brushed his shoulder, cold and insistent, though no one was there. "No return. You are part of it now." James collapsed against a console, chest heaving. He felt the past, the present, and something beyond collapsing into one unbearable moment. The tape spun faster, the lights flickered, and the shadows pulsed like living veins. He could no longer distinguish the signal from the station, or from himself. Every sound, every whisper, every flicker of light was alive, watching, knowing, consuming. James realized then, there was no escape. The station had claimed him, and the signal, it was only beginning. James stumbled forward, the walls bending slightly as he walked, shadows twisting unnaturally around him. Every step felt heavier, the air thicker, the silence louder. He could hear the hum of the station, but it was different now, pulsing, alive, almost breathing. His flashlight flickered, casting jagged shapes across the walls. A doorway stretched impossibly tall, then shrank as he blinked. The tapes on the console played voices that didn't belong. Some his own, some he swore were memories he had never lived. "You can't leave. Not ever." The voice was everywhere, surrounding him, inside him. James rubbed his temples, trying to ground himself. But the station had other plans. A Igora head bent in impossible angles. Doors appeared where none had existed. Walls rippled like liquid metal. Every reflective surface, glass, metal, puddles of water, showed him distorted versions of himself. Faces twisted in anguish, mouths moving in silence, eyes pleading, accusing. James' breath came in shallow gasps. He touched the nearest wall. It pulsed under his fingers, alive. The smell of decay intensified, mingled with ozone, electricity, and something faintly sweet, like burnt sugar. He heard footsteps behind him, slow and deliberate. He turned. Nothing. Then the voice again. Closer, intimate, terrifying. You belong here, James. James tried to back away, but the floor seemed to stretch, elongate, warp beneath him. His reflection in a cracked monitor winked at him independently. Smirking, he stumbled into a room that wasn't there before, walls closing as he entered. Static filled his ears. Whispers overlapped. Names, dates, events. Memories of the vanished. Memories of Ellen. Memories of himself. All one horrifying, endless loop. James gripped his head. His mind screamed to separate reality from illusion. But every corner of the station resisted. Every shadow, every echo, every pulse of light bent his perception. They are all here, waiting, listening. The tape spun faster, voices overlapping, twisting, forming sentences he couldn't understand yet somehow knew. Time lost meaning. Past, present, and something beyond merged in dizzying waves. James felt his own reflection step out from the monitor. It reached for him, smiling. He screamed, but the sound was absorbed, swallowed by the pulse of the station, by the signal, by the distortion itself. And in that moment, he understood. The station was no longer just a place. It was a living distortion, and he was its newest resonance. James' vision swam as he staggered down a corridor that seemed to stretch into infinity. The hum of the station pulsed like a heartbeat, vibrating through his bones. Each step echoed with whispers, names, cries, fragments of lives long gone. A door ahead creaked open slowly, revealing a room lit by flickering monitors. On the screens, pale faces stared back, distorted, silent, yet unmistakably human. James froze. The faces shifted, mouths opening in silent screams, eyes pleading. He recognized one immediately. Ellen Marrow. Others, people who had vanished in town over the decades. They weren't dead, not entirely. They were trapped, part of the signal, absorbed into the station's pulse. James' breath caught. He reached out, desperate, but the figures recoiled, fading into static. A cold touch grazed his shoulder. He spun. Empty space. Yet, the pressure, the weight, remained. You see them. Soon, you will join us. James staggered back, heart pounding. The walls seemed to close, the lights dimming, shadows twisting into grotesque forms. Static surged from every corner, voices overlapping in unintelligible, tormenting harmony. He noticed remnants on the floor, torn papers, old cassette cases, photographs. One photograph showed a group of children, smiling at the camera, except the eyes had been scratched out, leaving hollow, staring voids. Another photo depicted a man, twisted, blurred, holding what looked like a recorder, the tape dangling from his fingers. James felt nausea rising. The station was feeding on memories, on lives, on time itself. And every soul it claimed added to its consciousness, its reach, its hunger. He tried to run, but the corridor shifted, the exit receding. The faces from the monitors reached out, shadows crawling along the walls toward him. He screamed, but it was swallowed by the pulse of static that now dominated every sound. Join us. James, join us. A hand, transparent, cold, grasped his arm. His vision blurred, colors melting, shapes twisting into faces he knew. And some he didn't. The weight of all the missing, all the taken, pressed down on him, suffocating. James realized then, These were the first of many. This didn't just take, they became part of it. And he was already too close to be spared. I fled the room of the eye, heart hammering. Its gaze followed me, unblinking, a weight pressing on my spine. The path ahead, revealed by the eye itself, twisted impossibly, yet I ran. I stumbled into a space that should have been a hotel lobby, but the ceiling hung inverted, chandeliers dripping upward, carpet folding like waves. Every step echoed, but the echoes returned, distorted, mocking me. Old artifacts crowded the room, keys with faded tags, suitcases cracked and leaking shadows, photographs yellowed with age. I moved among them, hands shaking, searching for something. Then I saw it, a photograph pinned to a warped bulletin board. Emily, my reflection, in row 19, and the hand, reaching out from the darkness. It was her warning. The journal had whispered before, but now the truth crystallized. The hand, her last attempt to speak, to guide, to survive, had been trying to reach me all along. Emily and I, we were echoes of the same memory, split and trapped by this place. A sudden crash shattered the fragile calm. Shadows lunged from every corner, the hotel itself reacting, twisting corridors into fangs. Keys rattled violently, photographs fluttered like frantic wings. I grabbed the photograph, clutching the evidence of truth. The hand seemed to pulse beneath the paper, guiding me, urging me onward. I had to move, had to survive. For Emily, for myself, for the chance to undo what had been trapped here. The eye's hum followed me, relentless. Yet now, I understood. This place thrived on fear, but knowledge was a weapon, and I held the key to its unraveling. I ran toward the next corridor, a scream echoing behind me, the walls pulsating with hunger. And in that twisted lobby, where past and present collided, I finally felt the hand guiding mine. James stumbled forward. The corridors now a twisting nightmare of angles and shadows. The hum of the station had grown into a deafening roar, vibrating through his chest, through his skull. Every step threatened to crumble the floor beneath him. He turned a corner and froze. Before him stretched a vast void, blacker than the night, deeper than any shadow he had ever seen. The walls around it pulsed, throbbing with the memory of all it had consumed. From the abyss came whispers, hundreds, thousands, overlapping in chaotic harmony. Welcome, James. We have been waiting. His knees buckled. The ground beneath him seemed to dissolve, revealing fragments of faces, hands, memories, all writhing in darkness. Ellen's voice echoed, closer, sharper, almost pleading. You shouldn't have come. Don't let it take you. James' heart hammered, every pulse of the station synchronized with his own, merging his fear with the abyss itself. Shadows stretched toward him, coiling like living smoke, whispering secrets of the missing, of the taken, of the signal. He stepped closer, drawn by curiosity and dread. Images flashed, previous victims, past explorers, all trapped in looping, silent torment. He saw himself, mirrored, reaching from the abyss, eyes wide, mouth screaming silently. The air grew cold, suffocating. Static surged, thick and tangible, pressing into his chest. The abyss called, promising knowledge, power, oblivion. You are part of this now, forever. James staggered back, trying to resist the pull. The walls bent impossibly, shadows wrapping around him, whispering, clawing, claiming. His own memories turned against him, echoing in dissonant, alien tones. Look into it. See yourself. Surrender. He blinked. The abyss mirrored his deepest fears. Every regret, every loss, every unseen horror. And then he realized it wasn't just a void. It was all voids, all times, all lives, all disappearances, all converging into this single, endless, hungry presence. James' hands shook, eyes wild. To step forward was annihilation. To step back, he wasn't sure there was anywhere left to go. The station, the signal, the abyss, they were one. And as he hovered on the edge, heart hammering, the whispers crescendoed. Join, or be forgotten. James took a trembling step forward, facing the abyss that had consumed so many. The hum of the station roared in his ears, voices screaming, whispering, begging, all at once. He clutched the ancient console, searching for a way to sever the signal, to destroy the source. Static erupted around him, twisting into faces, hands, shapes, memories of the taken. You can't stop it. James ignored the voice. He pulled at a bundle of wires, yanking reels from the consoles, smashing blinking panels, sparks flying, metal screeching. The abyss shrieked, a sound that was neither human nor machine, echoing in the deepest chambers of his mind. Light burst from the console, blinding, white, pure. The whispers screamed, then faltered. Shadows recoiled. The walls writhed, folding inward, struggling against the destruction. James felt a surge of energy, a pull that threatened to drag him in, yet he held fast. No, you belong. Then, silence. The station stilled. The reels stopped spinning. The monitors went black. James collapsed to the floor, chest heaving, mind reeling. But the silence was strange, unnatural. The abyss hadn't gone. It had shrunk, retreated, or perhaps waited. A faint pulse lingered in the walls, a reminder that the station was still alive, still aware. James rose slowly, scanning the room. The shadows had faded, the voices silenced. For now, yet he could feel it in his bones, in his breath. The signal had left its mark. He stepped outside, into the cold night air. The wind whispered through the empty streets, carrying echoes of the station's hunger. James shivered. The world seemed normal, but he knew better. Something had followed him. The last silence is only temporary. He looked back once, seeing the faint glow of the station in the distance. A sense of dread filled him, an understanding that some doors, once opened, never truly close. And though the signal was broken, the abyss was patient. James walked away, each step heavy, knowing the station had not finished with him, and that the last silence was never truly the end.